All right, sit back, relax. It's time for another Laneway Talks.
All right, Rob, welcome to Laneway Talks, and we are going to talk about the music industry. And I think we could kind of start off with a question that you put to me, is why even have a podcast about music? So what's your opinion on that?
Well, it's my question to you, really.
I think that, my opinion is that the timelines between what it was like when there was CDs and vinyl and how you would market yourself and what has happened now with the digital world and now we've moved to another level with AI involved. And we'll come to that later on because there's some huge issues evolving with AI being involved. Now, whether that be involved in the ridiculous thoughts that you can actually write a song with AI, and we've had a real chuckle in the office when we tested a few of these things. It sounds like, 30 years ago when you had the little chimes on your phone for messages on hold. And and what is evolving with AI with your marketings through social media, which is another minefield at the moment. So I think why have something on music? There's so many either YouTube videos or podcasts or whatever on music, and they relate to certain areas. I think one thing that I've found is that because Laneway Music started and was essentially a heritage label and a reissue label.
I love that term, by the way.
Yeah, and there isn't many videos or podcasts, I think anyway, that cater for that. They might cater for classic rock and, but that goes back to Iron Maiden and all these bands. So that's what they're talking about. That's what they're classing as heritage rock or classic rock. But there's a whole underclass under that did make a living out of music their whole lives because you could 20 or 30 years ago, but nobody even knows about anymore because they never had the profile. So I think it's really worthwhile. Of course, younger artists can always, and if they're stupid if they don't, they should always try and get something out of discussions like this. So there's my take on why I even have a podcast about music. There's still plenty to talk about and plenty happening.
Yeah, yes, of course.
I think if you look at our ages, and I'm 62. How old are you, Rob?
63.
Right. So if you look at our ages, are we too old? Well, from my perspective, I don't think I'm too old. I love music. I listen to it each day. I work with it each day. I still play the drums. I wouldn't consider myself great anymore because I don't practice enough. Then I look at yourself and I go, well, you are a really accomplished drummer. You have gone to university and done a degree and postgraduate work in music. So there's a wealth of knowledge there from your perspective. Let's be honest. Have you had the success in music? No, you have not. But could have you? Yeah, quite easily. If you were in the right band at the right time at the right place, there's no reason you couldn't have been in Metallica right now. So
circumstance. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, and music is a bit of that, being at the right place at the right time and whatever, if you're a good musician,
Yeah, I mean, Neil Peart talks about that. He wrote a song about that, but he said, just because he finished up in Rush didn't mean that he was going to be successful. I mean, he really worked hard at making all that happen. He said, but it was just a matter of circumstance that the original drummer left.
Yeah.
And he went for an audition drove his mum's Pinto up to the audition and just went berserk, and they loved him. So.
Yeah. And that's life from there. I mean, he was considered one of the best drummers in the world.
Absolutely, yeah, best rock drummer. Yeah, of course. So, I mean, I'm sitting here looking at, like Keith Richards' book, because I remember John Bon Jovi said in an interview that I heard once that, when is it time? And he said, as in time to, are you too old time? And he said, well, Keith Richards is the measuring stick.
Yeah.
He's still going, he's still playing, the Stones are still gigging. So that's the measuring stick. People just do it.
there's a perception when you look at, say, some of our artists, and for example, there's one band, the Durham Project, and I promote them as the oldest guys in the business, still playing, because they and I'm 62 and I'm saying they look like my grandpas, right? My grandpa.
How old are they?
Well, I don't know. They're probably, late 60s, early 70s, whatever, or, something like that. But they look, when I look at them, they look fairly old, but you listen to them and they're fantastic, and they do get good response online. Now, then you've got, for example, now the Buster Boys, which is keyboard player and the guitarist from Buster Brown, who've, working on quite a lot. Who are working on quite a lot of projects, but this is one particular one they put together, and they call it the Buster Boys. And
that was such a great band.
Absolutely. And
really, I have something to say. That was.
Oh yeah. When I got that record, every song on that album to me was a killer track. Probably the one killer track that didn't stand out for me. One of the tracks didn't stand out as a killer track was the cover, Rock and Roll, Beethoven or whatever, Roll Over Beethoven.
Well, right? I thought they did a good job of that, actually.
Well, I think they did a good job of it, but
play it dirty.
I don't see why they needed to do that when they wrote so many good original tracks on that album. And so
wasn't it? Because Lobby produced that, didn't he? And I think that a lot of bands of those time in that era, from what I can gather, they thought that they had to have a link that people could relate to.
You are completely on the number. There's no doubt about it that they felt that they needed to have one of those pub rock rhythm and blues songs or blues songs or whatever
that people could relate to.
It's a 12-bar blue, and so I do get it. And if you go back to the time, it was probably really relevant. And I still like the song. I'm just saying it was the little bit of a letdown on the album for me, because each song was fantastic.
Angry's lyrics and the stories, it felt to me as though it was a narrative that I could relate to. The stories of, going out and, what does he refer to a guitar as, buying your dream maker, which is your instrument, and just going out and doing it despite, it probably meaning not a lot to a lot of people. But,
well, there's our difference is you listen to the lyrics. I don't listen to the lyrics. I listen to the music and the vocal. The lyric itself means absolutely nothing to me. But
is that right?
What came out in that record for me, which still stands out today, and I can remember as clear as day from word go, was the clarity of the recording, which is actually a bit different for Lobby, and I knew Lobby. I worked with him quite a bit, and it was a crystal clear sound. That album, it's crystal clear, and you can imagine they wouldn't have spent many bucks on it. So it was my gateway to Phil Rudd. Yes, I think his playing was very expressive and not so much experimental, but he was overplaying, which I love drummers doing that, but it's not so much called for in later styles of rock. It's like, keep it simple. Well, he wasn't a complicated drummer, was he?
Well, he could be if he wanted to be, but he didn't have to be.
Well, interestingly, I've never heard him as a complicated drummer.
Well, something to say, there's quite a few different parts on that album that have some very complicated drumming in it. And there's a couple of...
Well, it's interesting because you are a drumming teacher. So I found I practiced to that record a million times in my youth, right? Yeah. And I found it an extremely easy album to practice to, right? Now, you put that up against, I would practice to at my height when I was just drumming all week, every night, and I would practice to Neil Peart, all right? And I'd really have a good crack at it.
What song?
Eh?
What song? I was playing through Subdivisions last night.
Yeah. No, well, see, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it now, of course. I just can't. But I'm just saying that I found that practicing to Buster Brown I found really easy. And that's why I'm interested to see how, and you being a drumming teacher, to go, he could be quite complicated. But I suppose in different ways, not in that way of Neil Peart. Would you?
I think that the time thing, the space and the gaps that they leave in the accents. I think of something to say, there's the break between when it goes into the standard groove of the song, because they've got this really prog intro with the keyboard thing, that the way the song starts, and it's really progressive. And then they go into the sort of the standard rock and roll fare after that. It's always acting a boom, boom, ba, dum, ga, da, dum, dum, da, and then it goes into the groove. It's really spacey, really accurate, super clean, which is everything Phil Rudd is.
I know exactly what you mean on that particular song too.
Lars was doing an interview the other night that I saw, and they were grilling him about who the best drummer in the world was, and and they went, it's got to be Bonham, or is it Neil Peart? And he said, well, you've got to add other guys in there. And, the other guy was Ian Pace, and he said, and there's another guy, it's Phil Rudd,
right?
That are in there. So it was interesting for Lars to bring Phil Rudd up, because I think it's nice to get a bit of a tick for. Well, I mean, he's from New Zealand, but a so-called Australian drummer from an Australian band.
Well, I'll pull it back a bit. I'll go back to where we started, which was the Buster Boys.
Sorry.
And no. That's what we're here to do, is to flesh it out. And what you can find with the Buster Boys is there's just a lot of Buster Brown in there, of course. And you've got Chris Wilson on keyboards, who was the keyboard player, and you've got John Moon on guitar.
Okay.
And John Moon played with everybody and anybody throughout his whole career. Now, then you look at the video, and I want you after this to go and have a look at the video on our YouTube channel, and it's a bunch of old guys. Well, I'm one of those old guys, but not in that. But but I look at it and go, how. Because I'm conditioned in we're marketing to a young audience, which is just not the case. Now, there is that there is a young audience that will affiliate themselves with some of these old musicians because they go, wow, but I don't know that that's really big. And then what we've started to notice at Laneway Music is that lately there's been some great older artists that are being marketed and doing well. And so we've just started to push that. We're testing it with that. It's a bit different in the way we're marketing it and going about it, to see what the results and the analytics will be like. And it will be very interesting in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about it and see what comes out of it. Because I'll tell you one that I picked up on it this morning, and that's what we, every day, first thing we do when we, get in the office is we check analytics. That's number one. And with that, Buster Boys, what's it called? It's called, I'll get it anyway. It's actually, I'll tell you what it's called right now. It's called, that particular song, Good Times. And they've got 3 videos out, but they've got a whole album. Anyway, what we noticed with the analytics was that it was trending to women 54 and above 3 times more than males in that age category. It's kind of really unusual, because I can assure you most of everything we put out has a male skew to it. I don't know why, and I can't work that out. It has a male.
Well, the nature of the music is.
Well, but you're saying that, but then you listen to this and think Buster Brown, right?
Yeah.
And it's got this female skew, but from 54 onwards, not underneath that. So after that, you're getting it, and you're getting 3 times the amount. So there's some crazy analytics that you kind of got to get out of all this and see, well, who are we marketing to? I mean, that to me would suggest that 54 plus we market really solely to women. And so, I think, does that come back to women find them attractive because we're old or whatever, or is there something like that in it? Anyway, they're really good analytics to look at, to look at that. Now, the other thing I wanted to say was, how many years experience is there between the two of us? So I've been doing this for a good 30 years, 60, 30 and more, 35 years, right? And you've been doing it the same, really. And so...
I started when I was 8, so...
I realise that, but let's go from the industry perspective. So I say from when I started, I don't know, working at
82.
Mushroom. Yeah. Mine was about 80. Mine was 84, okay? Yeah. So we've got about 60 or 70 years experience between the two of us. Now, let's look at the background. So where did you go? Was yours first at Brash's?
As in working?
Working, yeah, working.
I toured for like 3 years before all of that.
Okay, so you've gone more from that, so touring to, say, Brash's and then retail in music, for many years?
Yeah, I was in retail. I had my own store in 78.
Yeah.
And we had the PA hire shop next door, and I was going out sort of moonlighting doing gigs. And in the last podcast, I sort of went through how all that happened, and then I closed the shop that I had and then joined the Modes, and we just started touring, and that was in December 82. And we just, for me, that was just full tilt for 2 years non-stop.
Well, because that's a different, I know nothing about retail, absolutely nothing. So, and it's, so if you've done that and you've done, a lot of the touring and whatever, and then you've got the teaching, which again, I know nothing about.
Yeah, I mean, that came sort of after for me. So.
No, really? No, but it's within your experience. We're talking here about our whole experience, right?
No, of course. But I mean, it came in the process of steps. It was like, because I played in a band, people would come up and ask me if I taught. Yeah. And I kind of went, not really, but, because I like what I did and the music that I played.
Well, I mean, but if everybody listening, Rob has a book out on drumming. So it's become a big part of your life, teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my whole study for the past 10 years, I mean, I've just completed my doctorate and passed my examination. Yep. So a couple of examiners would like to release it as a book, my thesis. So there's another book sort of in the wind. So what I get from you, you've got this, playing live, you've got this retail experience, you've got tutoring, you've got education, okay? So there's a good wide experience here. Now, I've got the touring stuff, done that. I've got no retail experience. I've got no tutoring experience, teaching. And my education is completely different. So no education in music as such, all right? And that's a very specialised area. So you've got that. So if I go back to me, it's, I was playing since, about 9 years old. When I started work in a life insurance business, as an accountant, because there you go. I did a dual economics commerce degree, and I did that, and I thoroughly loved it because I loved doing tax, and I was in the tax division. So goodness,
I found that very interesting. But within 2 years, I'd gone to work for Michael Gadinsky.
Yeah.
So I didn't last too long there, and I went to work for Michael, and again in accounting, and then from there I went to Network 10, and again as in finance, as a financial controller for production for the network. And from there I went to Crawford's. I only lasted a year at Crawford Productions, which a lot of younger people won't know what it is, but was the Australian premier television production house.
They were, yeah.
And yeah, exactly. Just so much. The Sullivans.
Love that show.
Yeah. So and then from there, I only was just on 12 months, and those stories have been. People go, I was poached. Well, I got a phone call one day from an employment agency. I think it was Michael Page.
Oh, wow.
And the guy rang me, and I must have gone in for a job many years earlier, and he must have had my name on his files, and he just said, look, who are you? Yeah, you're Vince, yep. And we went through my background a bit, and he goes, look, I got this job, I think it'd be perfect for you, and I want to put you forward for it. So then he told it was shock. Now, I didn't know much about shock music, or shock entertainment, as we then called it in the end. And
okay.
Shock were the independent distributors, right? And that's what they did.
Was it Shock Records? Or?
Shock Records, yeah. Shock Records, right?
Yeah.
And so I went down, and I got interviewed and got the job. But what I'd found when I went in and started working there, where they were in much more serious position financially than anybody had let on. Anyway, we worked on that for many years. We got to a point where we were turning over about $130 million. So what happened was we got that company up to about $130 million as finance director by that stage. And we were at the time bigger than Warner Music. And then from there, I got a call from Michael Gudinski again, who I hadn't seen in years. And quite frankly, we weren't friendly because we were the opposition and we were powering ahead. Mushroom were nowhere near our size. And to say he really had an issue with the label and we were so strong in that area.
Just won it.
Yeah, and could we talk? So the funny thing was I ended up meeting with him, a clandestine meeting in Chapel Street at a goulash restaurant in the morning at 10 o'clock in the morning. And the first thing he says is, "Do you want a morning elixir?" And he's got a vodka. I just go, "Are you insane?" Not a chance. And that's where we developed. Well, no, we established that I would come across, and it was Liberator Music, and I'd bring over a guy called Nick Dunshay with me. Of course, Nick Dunshay, now who's still there, says he was the guy that established Liberator Music. Of course, that's just simply not true. But people embellish everything when they,
well, they do. It's
so
objectivity is
and so and that was that. And then I was with Michael, and then after that we had a falling out, and essentially I started Laneway Music, and there was Third Verse prior to that. It didn't work out with a few other guys. Yeah. And we started Laneway Music. Now, so it's in between all of that, I was on the board of MCM, which was a radio networking syndication. So we used to syndicate across Triple M and all those stations. We'd make shows for them. So I was on the board. We were a public company, and I was there, and there were several other companies, and I was across all the companies in Mushroom too. So it's been entertainment every step of the way. Nothing's ever changed. So when you put that, now remember, mine was more from the business side, although towards the end I got towards the creative side, but it was really mostly the business side. And you, to me, have a more it is the creative side because of the tutoring of drumming, and then that full-on education in music. And that is, as I said earlier, a very specialised educational area. So I think there's our backgrounds. So, I want to ask you right now, what's your take on the music business at this point in time?
It's, is it educated opinion? I really try and stay open to, I still work at the shop. I've been working at Derringer's drum shop in Adelaide more now that I've finished uni. I've completed my PhD.
Yeah.
And the guys that I work with are incredibly talented drummers. They're young guys. They're all working incredibly hard. They're doing lots of gigs. And I hear all this conversation around, and I still gig with, bands. I've been doing gigs with local guys over here, and a lot of people that I gig with are doing multiple gigs at in different states. But there's a lot of work around at the moment. So I try to base it on what I actually see and hear that these people are doing and what we're doing. And it seems that there's a lot more work. There's a lot of negative, it's not the same. Oh, no, it's not. But the young guys are just killing it. They've got lots of shows. They're releasing lots of products. They can all, they live for recording. They live for writing. So it seems really healthy. And from a retail perspective, we can't get enough drums. We're just selling so many instruments. It's just, they say, people haven't got money and interest rates are up and economic factors. And, my boss there even says the same thing, the economic downturn. I said, well, behind the counter, people are forking out cash for instruments. So hand over fist at the moment. I know it's Christmas, but it looks really healthy and there's a lot of hope out there.
And it's not, and none of it's cheap. Even just buying drumsticks. If I go in to buy drumsticks, I always buy at least a half a dozen pairs at once. And it's not cheap, No,
well, sticks now are $32.95 a pair. I mean, that's for hickory sticks. There was a guy came in and bought Japanese oak sticks, which Primark, mate, you're saying it's $45 for a pair of drumsticks.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of went, whoa, where did that come from? I know materials are getting more expensive. COVID made the freight companies just explode. That's the biggest cost factor that I've noticed increase. But that goes into manufacturing, and then people want the wages put up, and so the cost of everything's going up, but people are still spending the money.
Yeah.
And guys are just still gigging, bands are still writing music and everyone's sort of playing. So it seems positive.
I think what you're telling me is that the creativity is still out there, because
absolutely
that all comes with creativity and artists wanting to be creative. So that's still out there, and it's as vibrant as ever. From our perspective on a digital platform, or from a digital perspective, things are as good as they've ever been. The amount of new music coming out, as we all know, is, I don't know, whatever they spout, someone spouts, I don't know, 100,000 songs a day or something. Is it true or isn't it? But that's creative. And I put together, for example, I don't know if you saw it on our Facebook page, a new blues playlist, which I'm just toying around with, and I called it Deep South with a Blues Twist. And who cares? That's just the name I came up with. But why I did it was because and I don't like to say Spotify, but yeah, I did it. I did get my inspiration off Spotify, because they'd suggested a whole heap of tracks to me personally off my listening analytics.
Yep.
And I'd gotten to a lot of these bands that were alternative blues rock bands or artists. And I started listening to them all, and they're blowing me away. Yeah, and the thing was that they were a myriad of age brackets. So you were going from young artists to, I'm not going to say old artists, but, in their 40s. And so it just blew me away, the calibre and the alternative sound that they were bringing with this blues twist. So I started this, this playlist, and I'm going to keep developing it now and trying to find artists that you've never heard of. And a lot of them have got only 2,000 streams. A lot of them have got 200,000 streams a month or whatever. And what that tells me is, wow, it's as vibrant as ever with the creativity that comes in that, let's call it that genre, but that will go across all genres. So the digital platforms have given a wide berth, I think, to a lot of artists. Now, of course, they're not earning any money, and we know that's the big twist. Now, and I'm going to talk to you a lot about that in the coming weeks, because you've got the education background. I've got, I suppose, the business background on all the analytics that's going on with this. And I think, it's going to be interesting coming up with a solution. First a solution, but trying to decipher first why it's happening and why they're not getting paid. So if you got 10,000 streams, you'll get virtually nothing. And that's a lot of streams.
So that comes back to the original question that we started with. That's one of the main reasons that we're here, is to investigate those problems.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to make, because, I hear it all too often. What's the use? We get paid nothing. Well, yeah, that will be the case, and it will be worse in 2 weeks' time, from the 1st of January with Spotify. So,
is it naive to say that there must be a fix, or there must be a way to navigate through this for musicians?
I think that what will happen, I think the death knell for Spotify will happen over the next 5 years. Their dominance will go down, I think. So let's give an example of what Laneway thinks. Well, we thought a couple of years ago, this is just unacceptable. We can't make any money, and if we can't make any money, the artists can't make any money. And so the whole thing just collapses. So we had to think of alternatives.
What's the cause of that, though, coming back to that original
that's Spotify, and I think
because the majors own the major percent of 70%. Spotify.
70%.
Have they come in after the fact, though?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have they sort of jumped on the bandwagon and said, "Oh, look, Spotify's taken off. We need to own this"?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the top end of town, which has always been the issue, right? Like,
everything they're doing. So if you think about it, if they own the majority of Spotify, and they've now Spotify have now decided, well, if you don't get 1,000 streams, you don't get any money, even 2 cents, and what that does allocates, I don't know, $500 million more to.
Yeah, I mean, my head just falls over when you start to talk about numbers like that. I try and pull it back to the central issue is like, how can we, the key to any of this is, I'll quote Marsha Langton. I went to a seminar last week, or a couple of weeks ago at uni. Musicologist Society of Australia had a seminar at the University of Adelaide a couple of weeks ago, and Marsha Langton was saying the key to anything of these sorts of issues is education. I think people need to be educated from the negative aspects, or they don't realise what they can actually do to change what's going on. So I think when I say I'm trying to understand how Spotify are essentially what you're saying, taking everything away, and there's a potential that it's going to get worse. How do we rectify that?
I think that's too music orientated. So I don't believe what he told you, and in the least, I don't believe it at all. Right, and I think that is a music industry response, and the answer is society and economics, and it is a situation that exists out there in business. Big business does not care about the numbers. They care about what the top 10% of the executives will earn, and that they are geniuses, and, they're the ones who are going to make the millions, and that there is no real love for the product that they're selling. And I think
I get all that, but at the end of the day, what can we do about it as musicians?
I think, for example, I don't know so much about musicians, and that might come more from your perspective, and I'll give you what I think from Laneway. And we decided 18 months ago that we had to come up with a solution. Our solution is Laneway Red, which will launch hopefully in February, and I've talked to you about it before. And it will first start out, and it's basically just a Bandcamp, right? But it more becomes a complete music ecosystem, and it will grow and flourish over the 12 months. It will first go out with downloads, which you do on, Bandcamp, SoundCloud, and whatever. But we will market that directly for our artists and push them.
But you're still using the medium of Spotify, which is essentially the enemy, right?
No. So what do you mean the medium of Spotify? What do you mean by that?
Well, isn't that coming out through Spotify?
No. We are launching our own platform. We've been working.
I thought you said it was coming out through Spotify.
No, not Laneway Red. So that will be its own platform. It will be just like a Bandcamp or SoundCloud, right? But there'll be no costs to the artists whatsoever. We've come to that where Bandcamp.
Other than time.
Yeah, but hold on. There's you don't pay for Bandcamp, but you do pay for SoundCloud, and then I think there's some charges in Bandcamp somewhere in there, but ours will be firstly for downloads, and we do a lot of downloads with our stuff, but I don't know why people would do that anymore. And then what we're going to develop it for is there's ticketing, there's merch, there's communicating with your fans, all that kind of stuff in there. But it will, once we get the advertising happening, we will then go out directly with a very transparent formula for paying you, the artist, say it's Virgin Soldiers, for the streams that you get for the ads that were placed on your page, okay? So it becomes very transparent. So if we got $1, we may be, and we haven't come up with a percentage yet, but it may be that we do a 50-50 split straight away with you. Now that's, with Spotify and all that, you'd be lucky to get 0.0001%, okay, because they've got to pay that.
Yeah, it's still, as I said, I can't fathom those equations, and it doesn't make any sense in my mind how they justify that.
Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that what we're going to show is going to be very transparent, okay, to the artist. So we'll see how that all transpires over the next 12 months. We're just about there. We've just purchased all our equipment, which has cost in the tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars, and, servers and switches and, RAID arrays and all that kind of stuff. And so that's all just been done. Then there's the hiring of the sites, you know, where you put it all in. It's costing a fortune. So we're getting ready for all of that. And so it's only around the corner. Now, of course, it'll be more mobile-based, but it's based on the PC, but on the mobile it works fantastic. So what we're saying is that we're going to go it out ourselves. We will always still have everything on all those other platforms. So that's just incremental income, and hopefully we will develop more income for our artists. Now, why would it be any different? Why would anybody even want to come onto our site? Well, firstly, it's going to be populated with 20,000 songs, which we own. So that'll be Virgin Soldiers and whatever, okay, that goes there. So if you go onto Bandcamp and you have a listen to some new music on there, it'll blow you away how bad it is. I don't know if you've gone on there.
No, I don't think it would.
Yeah, and you get some new music and you go, are you serious? Why would anybody even profile this? It's so bad. So, but there's some really good stuff on there too. And so
beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. But unfortunately, when you've got to market something, you'll market what the masses will have been conditioned to like, because that's just the way it works, and you can't change that.
Yeah, I think that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
That statement.
Yeah. Absolutely it is, and how they've been conditioned. So if we say that it's populated with some first-class music, that's the number one reason people will go to it, and we will really promote the hell out of it. But then there's stuff on there which you can't do right now. So if you have people streaming your music on there or buying your music, or if you're, I don't know, discussing stuff on there and you got their email, of course email is king, we will be able to go out directly to your fans. Now, right now, Spotify are experimenting with that in 3 countries and doing what they call their marquee marketing. And we haven't got it in Australia. And, you know, it's like when you go in there, if I see Virgin Soldiers and I see that most people who are listening to Virgin Soldiers are listening to, because it tells you, oh, well, your fans also listen mostly to Metallica and Iron Maiden and whatever. So I'm using those as examples. I should be able to market directly to those people on Spotify, but you can't. They're only experimenting with it. They could have come up with that 5 years ago, and they didn't. And why don't they? Because they don't want to give you that data, because that's just too easy. Then you'd have all these bands, little bands, trying to go on the coattails of Metallica. As well as you know, when you hear a band that's a little band, but they say, let's say Dirty Honey, I don't know if you've listened to them or whatever, or Goodbye June. These bands are just fantastic, but they haven't got the profiles.
Yeah.
But they could quite easily if you were listening to Metallica and they suggested that to you, but they don't. They don't do it. Right, and you can't get directly to that audience. You can't get there.
I mean, there's a couple of bands. I mean, Stone Trip are one of them. Are doing a mighty job. Melbourne band at the moment, and Carly Jewel. You know, they're 2 great artists that are out there, and I know they're doing well, but trying to get through. You know, when you sort of say Metallica, it's a big leap. You've got all these other hard rock bands out there, especially Melbourne, and I don't know what's happening in Sydney, but Melbourne seems still to be the epicenter of that style of music.
And what happened? I think Stone Trip I think they're with Golden Robot, so they should be doing okay. I mean, you still need to be with a label. There is no doubt about it, but you not with a distributor. So you know, people might say, "Well, Laneway's a distributor." No, we are a label too, because we spend money on acts that we think deserve that spend. And why would they deserve that spend? If they're prolific, so they're putting out a lot of product and they're doing gigs and, you know, they're working it themselves. We have other acts that all they're doing is just putting out the music, but they do nothing else. Well, that's a complete waste of time for us. And
I mean, Nothing Sacred's another one. I mean, I've been touring and doing supports at the moment and releasing new music. You know, they're doing it on different independent platforms. But, I mean, that's the beauty of social media. You get to actually see that. I think that's the platform.
I think so.
View it on.
What I found with individual artists, and especially the more mature artists, is they may do some social media, but it's basic. social media. It's nowhere near good enough to get out there.
I think that's an education process for the older generation.
Yeah.
So that's what I was coming back to that original comment about people need to be educated on how to do that.
Okay. Now I'm getting the connection where you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's the educational aspect of like, all right, well, how do I promote my band through social media without it turning into a complete nightmare of, technological numptiness? It's difficult for a lot of older people because they haven't grown up with the technology.
It's virtually unattainable, mate. I'm going to tell you right now.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's just a matter of working it out. Like just
that's where we'll differ, and it's where we work in that space a lot. And it's so complicated now, and it's changing at a rate of knots that us who are using it each day and spending a lot of money on it too, it changes. I'm on chats because we have people that look after us with Google and with Meta, and it is so complicated. I just sit there sometimes think an artist hasn't got a hope. Now, if you go down to and this is our opinion, and then I want yours, is if you go down to a band who are 20, 22, 23 in that age bracket, it's a completely different set of tools because they don't need the intricacies of that depth of what you can do with your marketing in social media because they're so good at it anyway. They live on the phone. They live with social media. It is their form of conversing with all their friends and then their fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right? So whereas the older ones just don't do it as much, and if they do it, it's clunky. And so they need the depth of the marketing abilities of the Metas and the Googles and whatever. But to actually get into it and really do it, to me, I'm telling you, I think it is quite unattainable for them because to be creative, to then get gigs, and to be themselves and, do what they've got to do to be the musician and then to do all of that is just way too much work.
See, that's where I instantly go to you need help with something like that and you go AI is probably the smartest, quickest straight line all the way through it. So why don't they use AI for the power of good for helping older musicians understand how to get out there and get marketed? I mean, there's a really good question for an AI chatbot.
Well, AI is a real issue at the moment. I'm going to bring that up in another discussion in coming weeks. It is a real problem right now.
I was watching Joe Walsh. He goes, he doesn't care about AI because it's not human. So why would you even bother with that?
Well, I'm going to put it in the business sense and not from the creative. We have had some sessions here on the creative side and we all burst out laughing how bad it is.
Yep.
All right, so that's that. Yeah, it's going to be years. That's our opinion. But from AI being employed to work within Google and Meta, it is a complete disaster at the moment. It will work itself out, but it could take a year or two, and it is creating havoc.
Well, what's an example of it being a disaster?
All right. We set up a campaign for Google, and the first thing that comes up, it says you have a trademark issue and you have a copyright issue. I go, well, that's bullshit. That's bullshit because we own the vision and we own the audio. So there can't be any trademarks or copyright issues in there. So that's number one.
Is that a blanket search bot that goes
Well, that's what they're not telling us that, but I finally yesterday in a discussion with one of them said, are you using AI to vet that first? And he just went blank. He didn't say a word. I said, well, that gives me the answer, right?
Now, I can't tell you because there's probably some legal issue there, so they're not allowed to do that.
Well, it could be. It could be. And then I said, but we've got to get to the bottom to fix this because, you have to do certifications, certificates, and it goes on and goes on, and they silo their different departments. So YouTube, which is Google, is a silo in it to itself. Then Google is another silo, and then AdSense, which is Google, is another silo, and they don't talk to each other. So if I said to you, so how do I get rid of that trademark? How could someone have a trademark? You know what I found? It was a word in one of the band's names. It had picked it up and said, no, that's a trademark issue. Well, that's just on a legal basis, that's just not true.
No.
It is not true. And on a copyright basis, it picked up some, name of the song or whatever, and said, well, there's someone owns that. Yeah, of course we own it, you dodo. That's us. And so, but, you know, to get those relinquished and taken off is a nightmare. You know, it's taking up so much of our time, which takes away from our ability to market our artists, because we're having to fight with them to get, because I need it to work. I'm prepared to pay them. I like to pay. You know, I've got some campaigns running at the moment where they're not charging us for them. I don't know why they're not charging us, but we're getting all the results on YouTube. And I said to them, look, someone said to me, why bother? You're getting it for free, so leave it. I said, we don't want it for free, Rob. We want to pay because we want the results and we want the analytics, and because that's how we learn how to do the next marketing campaign.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right? Yeah. And he goes, that's not my problem. That's YouTube's problem. I go, what? I said, you're Google. You own YouTube. This is where we're at the moment, and that's AI, what it's doing, and it is a nightmare at the moment. And, you know, a lot of people won't see it because they see the front ends, but from the back end, that what's the issue with that? The time taken up to do it means it's a time I don't have to market or do a post for Virgin Soldiers. Okay? And that's to your detriment, because I'm fighting still with them trying to fix that. So we've got some huge issues with AI coming up, and we'll talk about those separate, because I can get right down to the detail, so hopefully it'll help some people. You know, I wanted to ask another question.
Sure.
Is there a scene for the aged musician?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mike Rudd is one guy that comes to mind, one artist that comes to mind. I mean, he's out there gigging every week, and he's still pulling a lot of people and filling rooms. I think there's a lot of artists out there that I know, that I work with, that are still out there creating new music and touring with it, which is good. I mean, the tribute thing to me is probably a little bit overblown, but, you know, you have to learn to be able to play those songs of other artists. So at the end of the day, it makes a better quality musician.
Yeah.
Yes, and hopefully that'll reflect in their own original material if they get a platform to do that on, which, as I said, you know, Mike Rudd's an interesting perspective for that. And I know Gil Matthews, you know, and his mob, Marty Rose and all that, they're all out there, they're all gigging, they're all still gigging. They're a generation before us, and they're still out there doing it. You know, we've got a thing over here where Johnny Bywaters sort of runs it, and that's a monthly thing that they do here, and all those musicians are getting up and playing. So, yeah, definitely they're still out there, they're still active, and I think it's vital that community exists, because, you know, it makes everyone last a little bit longer, I think.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree. I think that, you know, the ability to be creative online and put your music out to the world is more accessible now than it ever was. So the heritage artist or heritage musician can do anything anybody else can do at any age. They have a platform, but then we're going to pull that back to what you said. We have to educate them on how to do it, because it's all there available for them, free of charge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's the key issue. And, you know, what I would come back to, as I said, Marcia Langton's point that she made at the seminar a couple of weeks ago, you know, it is about educating the older generations of Australians. You know, that's on a completely different issue, but as musicians, I think that's important as well, to keep people educated, to keep up with the changes and what's going on, and how to get what we create out there, whether it be art, whether it be music, you know, whether it be poetry, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's all art.
Well, that's right. And the technology that's related to it, something that comes, as soon as you say that, the education process, what comes to mind for me is that I go, you know, I always tagged the aged person like myself or older that they are iPad users, right? They sit there with their iPads, you know, and I don't know, they read their books or do whatever they do.
Yeah, I'd still like a real book. I'd like the tactile sensation.
Yeah.
Smell of a book.
Well, I didn't know you could buy them anymore. But anyway,
books.
There's no bookshop.
Come over to my house. I got plenty of them.
There's no bookshops. There are no bookshops around here.
Yeah, there are. There's plenty.
No, not around Richmond. No. So
we've got like free ones in the street. The people around the corner from us, there's a couple of them, they actually put out books. There's like 2 or 3 little doll houses they put out the front of their house, and they're community bookstores, and people come in and they swap books for nothing.
Yeah. Well,
it's a great little community.
The swap thing, the new bookstores, I think, are on the nose. Yeah. Very few between.
Yeah, there is new bookstores still around.
So that's how I kind of tagged it, which is which is not good because it's not true. Now, how does that relate to social media? Very important, because when we do our marketing, I might have said this to you in a past discussion, is that we market to mobile phones and computers. We do that because we know from our statistics, and I'll give you an example, that a mobile phone advertisement or something to do with music gets a click or a like far more quicker than a computer, then goes down to an iPad, that then goes down to a TV. So, for example, I've got, let's say I'm doing a campaign right now on Craig Horne and the Hornets. You know Craig, don't you?
Oh, I do, and I've just read his book, Line of Blood. It's fantastic.
Yeah, he's given me a copy, but I don't read, so I'll have to.
Oh, mate, you've got to read it.
I'm going to have to sit on the beach and read it.
Craig's brilliant and wonderful writer. He's a good buddy of mine. He's helped me through my thesis.
Well, his latest song, and actually you could come online to our Facebook page tomorrow, because at about midday we will be doing a live show from my deck upstairs.
Fantastic.
MCG behind us with Mike and Jeff with Craig and Jeff Burston. Anyway, his latest song is Wasteland, which there's a video out for. Now, we're marketing those two.
I think I put Craig in touch with you when I interviewed him.
Absolutely. You're probably the one that get him to come.
I was the gateway to Laneway.
There you go. and I appreciate it because his music is so good. Now, so we go to Wasteland, which is the newest one. We always now do a 16:9 video, and we always do a vertical video for phones, right?
That's good information to have.
Very difficult to do, because how do you keep the artist, if he's moving around on the screen on a 16:9, in the vertical? Okay, it's a difficult thing. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Exactly. Really hard to do. You got to do it in the editing, and you can do it in the editing, because we can get the vision to move around in that vertical. But it takes time.
So is that necessary for the medium when you
absolutely
upload it or something?
Yeah. So we have to do now. We're doing 2 video uploads to YouTube. It'll be the 16:9 and the vertical. So then we go and market those, okay? Let's have a look at that one. It's been up. It was released on December the 15th. The vertical video has 15,500 views. And the landscape, 16:9, high def one, has 4,200. Now, let's look at the next stat. To get comments on videos, pretty difficult. A lot of our big bands get a lot of comments. So let's use Spy versus Spy. They get 2 or 3 comments a day, okay? And that's a lot. You know, you go over here, that's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Now, then you go to, though, the likes, and that's the important one. The comments are not as important. They are, but not as. The likes. On the vertical, which is at 15,500, we've got 700 likes. On the landscape, 16:9, I've got 7 likes. So
wow, okay, interesting.
Now, come on, you know, mate, you got your doctorate. What does that tell you straight away? Why is that the case? It's the mobile phone. It's your thumb is going to go like straight away. It's so easy. I'm holding it in my hand. I'm watching the damn thing. And
boom.
Yeah, I can just go like. Now on the computer, a bit harder. Got to come down to the bottom of the screen, press the thumbs up, and it's a little bit more difficult, okay? Then go to an iPad or to a TV. An iPad, sometimes you can't even see the bloody like button, all right? Because it's...
Is that right?
Because it reformats.
I don't own an iPad, so...
Right. Well, it's a bit more difficult to actually do it, and then you've got to go down and find it. You might have to come down the screen, scroll up. And when you go to
a Mac.
Well, no, then go to then go to a TV, and you haven't got a hope. I mean, you'd have to get, now I've got, I don't know, whatever we've got a pointing device, so I've got to try and get that. That's like a nightmare.
If you tell her you've got a remote control, you haven't really got...
Yeah, and on the remote I've got a pointing device, so it's really difficult. And if it doesn't have that, it has the 4 arrows, so I have to go down that way.
Okay.
Of course, on another TV, and this will be a thing of the future, I have a little keypad and mouse pad, right? Now, until that's common, because then you can go around it, you can just forget the TV. It just, you're wasting your money marketing on there. So if you think about that, every time we go to market, the first thing we do is we exclude TVs and iPads or tablets. We say tablets, right?
Yep.
And we stick to to mobiles and computers. And remember, a Microsoft Surface Pro, which I use, which is a tablet, that's considered a computer because you have a pointing device and it's bloody Windows. It's just Windows all over. So so there's all that.
Okay.
You know, that's getting down to some detail. And there's a lot more detail than that. But that straight away, I bet you when the novice goes to advertise, they would just pick advertise. That's it on that. They would never go
so
down
you've got
to
to you have to refine that down to mobile phone.
Yeah, and you've got to...
biggest return, isn't it?
You've got to find it too, Rob. You know, what they do in Google or Meta, they hide those because they don't want you to exclude them.
Or you need to do Vincent's tips.
No, yeah.
You need to be able to educate people on how to do that, Vincent.
Yeah, but you've got to really delve down, and I sometimes miss it. I go down, to get to the end of the campaign, I go, no, don't say confirm.
You should do a YouTube video.
Yeah, I should, but but how do I get time that? Because we're doing this each week. So,
right.
But we will talk about those things. We'll spend a session on that detail, right?
That'd be good.
Because it is really important. So,
I'd like to do that.
But see, then I'll drag it back again to you started the conversation with we need to educate the aged musician or the heritage musician or the more mature musician, and I went, I'm not sure what you're talking about, but now I do know what you're talking about, and we've fleshed it out a bit, and there's a lot of learning, and that's when I then go back to and say that a lot of your middle-aged bands that sound great are going to struggle because that's the kind of detail you got to get, and they'll never get to it, and you can't because you're trying to do too much just with the band is a bloody business in itself, you know?
Yeah, it is. I mean, but, you know, it comes back to time management, you know, like anything you do these days is all about time management and,
you know,
being able to get that concept happening.
Some of the bands I talk to in the middle-aged sector who sound quite good, I discount straight away while I'm talking to them to bring them onto Laneway because they're talking about doing tours and all that. And I think to myself, now, hold on, I've just gone on to Spotify and look at YouTube and I can look around and there's no streams, there's no views happening. A video's out, a great video, and it's had 200 views. I go on to Spotify and it's under 1,000, so it could be 10.
Yeah.
And they're just talking to me about, well, we're going to do an East Coast tour. You know, I just have a chuckle to myself. With what? What you need first before you can do that, you need to get that social media happening and you need to have that bubbling away and then you can start thinking about a tour. A tour? I mean, a band that's established is struggling to do a tour.
I mean, the interesting, I don't know whether you've seen it yet, but my wife, I was actually out practicing, but last night my wife was watching the Shania Twain video movie.
Yeah, saw that.
And she had the biggest selling album at that stage. I can't remember the second album or whatever she had.
Huge.
And she never toured. She went in and recorded the next album, which was the biggest selling female artist in the world.
Yep.
And she never toured.
Yeah.
What she did, she wrote and made sure that she had 12 singles off that next album. And then once that was established, she wanted to go out and play that. But she had sold millions and millions of albums without even touring. And we're sitting there looking at each other, myself and my wife, going, that's completely opposite of what you'd think. You'd have to go out and tour to be able to promote the album. She didn't do that.
Absolutely. Look, that was, remember, it's a phenomenon. And on top of that, that album did, you know, every song was a killer. Now, come on, how many bands do you listen to now? 2 good tracks if you're lucky, or 1 really good track, and then there's all these average tracks. And there's some of our acts who are quite prolific at the moment, and I've been mentoring some of them and going through, and we have this discussion. So they're getting ready to write their next song because we try and make sure a band puts out a song every 6 weeks now.
Yeah.
So forget the album. The album's dead. That's a consolidation of the last 12 months.
Yeah, that was from the last conversation we had.
Yeah, and so
that little fact, yeah.
And so we, I've been mentoring some on it, and the results are coming out, and I'll have to talk to them and see whether we can talk about it in the future. But and I go through this, if you can write me 10 tracks and they're all driving and they're real driving force, if that's your style of music, and they're accessible. I won't use the word commercial. They're accessible, and they affiliate with radio listeners because the majority of the population has been educated on radio. Now that's changing now. There'll be playlists, but they've been educated on radio. So a self-indulgent song doesn't work. They need to be real killer tracks. And let's try and break down what is a killer track and why is it a killer track, and therefore what are you writing? And we've been working on this on one particular act specifically, more so than others, and the results are all coming home. I mean, mate, but it takes time. It doesn't come home in 2 or 3 months. It comes home over 12 months and then the pursuing 12 months. And,
I mean, it depends on the artist, I suppose, the work ethic. But.
Well, see, I don't see, because if you want success, that's part of your success. So
it is,
that's my difference from you. That if you want success, if you just want to put out music, that's a different thing. I've got some artists who are fantastic. I'll give you an artist who I think is fantastic, because I can't use him. He's Grant Miller. Now, Grant Miller is a drummer. He used to play. He played with Def Rhyme. Do you remember Def Rhyme?
I do.
Yeah, and there's a video on our channel on it, right? So have a look. That's
I think I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah, and then he went to work with Craig Johnson, or Craig James now, as he calls himself, from Mother Goose, a singer. And there's some new stuff out right now, and that just came out in the last week or two. And he did that, and then he played in I think cover bands, tribute bands, and whatever. But he's a multi-instrumentalist, Rob. So he's a guitarist, keyboard player, drummer, and singer. And he's putting out stuff now. I heard some of his stuff, and I enticed him to release it, and he's doing it now under Grant Miller. And there's no talk he's not interested. He's no talk going out, doing shows, doing anything. He's just putting out his music. And he's not even pressuring us, what about how many streams or whatever. He's just happy to put it out, and that's it.
Yeah,
and that's what he wants to do. And I listen to it and go, this is fantastic. I mean, it's just great creative music. So, yes, there was that complete opposite where I just want to put some music out and don't bother me, Rob, okay? And that's it.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do. And then I got the others that go, we want more streams, we want more gigs, we want to be big. So I can give you that other example where we've been working. I have to talk to the band, and go through exactly how we did it from, say, 12 months ago, and what songs I pulled out to give them examples and all that kind of stuff. And it's working. But that gets back to, where's your audience, who have been conditioned by what? They've been conditioned by society to listen. Yeah, there's always an exception, Rob. Okay, you can always give me an example of an exception, but I'm just saying about the majority.
Yeah.
And if you want to get out there and you want to get the big streams and therefore do the gigs and then, get into America, for example, where you should be, and have that success that you want. Of course, once you get there, because I've seen all of this and worked with, so many international acts, I couldn't even mention them, and whatever, is that once you do get there, well, that's just another story for another discussion, what arseholes they become when they're at the top, okay? And that's another story, because, you may dream about what Metallica might be like, but if you were there on tour with them and you saw what really happened, or if it be Sting or it be someone else, they're not nice people when they're at the top and fighting to stay at the top. And that's just a fact. But, that's the business we're in. Anyway, that's a good note to finish up on today.
Okay.
I think, and we've got plenty of points which we're going to discuss in, the coming weeks and months and whatever. And if anybody's interested in discussing something specific, we can always look at that too for them. All right?
Yeah, click subscribe and like.
Yeah. And I'm going to hassle you more, Rob, on your expertise, which is your education background. You can forget my education background. It's business. Nobody wants to know about that. But we want to know what's going on from the education background in music and what is being found out there, because that's where all the research gets done, yeah? Mine's just...
yeah, I mean, my particular field, is like it's pub rock music, so,
really relevant in Australia, mate.
Well, that is Australian, to boot, really. So, yeah,
I'd love to talk about pub rock and what the pub rock sound is. There's a specific. It was developed here in Australia, quite frankly.
Well, that's what my research is about. I mean, we discussed it in the last interview that I did with you. Like how it came through, and the nature of what Lobby and Billy Thorpe and all those pioneers of that style of music. That sound.
I think we could flesh it out a lot more. Quite frankly, it's
yeah. Well, I have. I've written 100,000 words on it.
That's why we're going. And that's why we're going to pull that out of your brain and and discuss it, because that's all that knowledge base that you've got.
Yeah. But for me, it's all based on personal experience, because I've been playing in pubs, for 30 years. So, and just through the nature of my perspective and how I've seen it. So, there's a lot of other people with a lot of other stories, and I speak to a lot of people what they actually think that pub rock sound is as well. So,
I think what's important too is just to say, look, I'm based in Melbourne and Rob is based in Adelaide. Okay, from my perspective, it's Laneway Music, but from Rob's perspective too, if anybody's interested, because you're doing tutoring also in drums, Rob's based in Adelaide, and you may want to contact him and whatever. And we will talk about the book too. What do I call it? A tutoring book? Do I call it a?
I've got my own YouTube channel as well. I've got Rob's Drum Shed, which my book Foundations, which is. It's available on all platforms from Amazon to Booktopia. I mean, it's available in Drum Tech in Melbourne. It's available here in Derringers and Adelaide. So, my book is out there, which is my, summation of a couple of different levels, from foundation starting level through to intermediate for drummers. So, that's what that's about and how that's come about.
And let's have a session too on buying a drum kit, because I'm out of touch there. Because I use that Roland TD17 and I have my old Premiere.
Well, I'm finely tuned at the moment, because I think I sold 8 yesterday, and I've been selling pretty much that many every day that I've been working.
But what I don't know anymore is what are the real new fittings and whatever, and how good they are. And
and lots of great product there.
Yeah, and the maple shells and all that, and the different sounds. And and look, on a sad note, my cousin died 2 weeks ago, who was a drummer also.
Sorry to hear that.
He used to play a see-through Ludwig kit. Do you remember those?
Vista Light, yes.
Mate,
I sold a few of those.
And I was sitting there during the funeral, and I was thinking about that drum kit, because it was always unique. It was a blue one, and I actually played it on a video. He loaned it to me once, and I thought about the shell and how did they round that and get no seam. Stuff, it was crazy stuff I was thinking about. So I'd like to talk to you about that, because you must know about that stuff. And why could they get a decent sound out of that?
It hasn't got as much tone. It's just very loud and very raw. But that goes back to the period of time that they were brought out. Come back to Zeppelin and just, because Bonham was probably one of the main drummers that made those kits.
I didn't know he used one. Did he use one, did he?
He did, yeah. He had a Vista Light, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he went to stainless steel, which was the last kit that he used, which is...
Oh, wow. Well, we're going to do a session on that, because that to me is, I love talking about that. And some of the saddles too, to sit in, oh man, just unbelievable at the moment.
They're now, you're looking at about $400 or $500.
Oh, I looked at one, it was $1,100 the other day, Drummer's Paradise.
Oh, yeah, that's the one Tabone specialises in. So.
Of course, he said he'll do me a nice deal, but I sat on that thing and went, this is fantastic, And then we'll talk about cymbals too. That's another thing I've lost track with,
I've got plenty of them.
Well, because if I play live, the kit's there, it gets hired for me, and it's just sitting there, you know. So I go, what have you got? And they might go, well, we've got a Premier kit and we've got a Yamaha kit and the yada or whatever it might be, and I'll just go, I prefer that. Let's go with that. But I don't really know much about it anymore. Anyway, we're going to talk about that because that's another education process.
Easy.
I'll indulge.
All over that one.
Oh, fantastic. All right, Rob, it's been great talking to you. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Laneway Talks with Rob Bounty and Vince Donato. And we'll get this up as soon as possible within the next 5 days or whatever.
Great.
And then we'll get back together in another week or so and let's do another one and let's just continue these on. But I'm hoping that you see the relevance in them and that you enjoy doing them, okay?
Yeah. Merry Christmas to all.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to everybody. All right, and more rock and roll, I say. It's all about the music.
Keep it rocking. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, mate.
Keep making it and keep listening to it.
See you, buddy. Bye.
See you. Thanks, Vince. Cheers.
Bye.
Well, there you have it, another Laneway Talks. If you enjoyed that, just search Laneway Talks for more great conversations.